it's Reija, and welcome to my Borrow-A-Thon Wrap Up. I'm really proud of myself because I actually managed to squeeze one extra book that wasn't on my original Borrow-A-Thon TBR into my reading list. What makes it even more amazing is the fact that I had to study full time this week, like almost 10-hour days, and it was really stressful and we had to finish a product in 5 days to design, prototype and whatever, and I still had time to finish all these books. I'm so proud. So proud. So, without further ado, let's just jump right in. I'll give you my thoughts on all the books I read. First up, I read Descender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and I loved this comic. It's probably the best comic I've read in a long while. It read like a movie script, like a really good movie script. Everything from the art to the writing really complemented, like it was like a symbiotic effect. The writing was good and the art complemented the writing really well. The whole thing is about a young boy robot trying to find his place in the universe and trying to figure out what connection he has to these massive killer robots that appeared 10 years before the start of this comic. I think the art style really complements the story. It's like really solid watercolor work, and because most of the cast is actually made of androids and robots that have really harsh lines and metallic finish to them, the softness of the watercolor really gives it a nice juxtaposition that I really love. I gave this 5 stars in Goodreads. Next up, I finished Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads, but the more I think about it, the more I'm inclined to lean to 2.5 stars, because I really didn't care for this book that much. Like, I finished it, so it wasn't so bad that I could not continue reading it. The writing was fine, but I just really couldn't get into the characters, even though logically, like rationally speaking, I should be able to identify with the main character a lot because she suffers from anxiety and has social issues and everything like that. And I just couldn't in any way. Like, I could sympathize some of the characters, but most of the time the way they acted it just didn't feel like the way normal people would act. Like, this whole book feels like this is how people act in bad movies set on university life and colleges. Like, I just didn't care for it. And also every time there was a fanfiction scene, because the main character writes fanfiction, every time there was a fanfiction scene, the whole story ground to a halt, and I could not, like, if I didn't care about the characters in the main plot, I really didn't care for the characters in the fanfiction, so I pretty much groaned every time I had to sift through those fanfiction scenes. So, not really a fan of this Fangirl. Next up, I read This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab, and this was my extra book that wasn't on my original TBR, but I had it lying around, so when I finished, like, Fangirl, I decided that, hey, I have time, I can finish this one as well. And I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, and the reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because I thought the villain was a bit paper thin, like, not very fleshed out. But other than that, I thought it was really well done. I love the main characters. I have a huge soft spot for morally ambiguous characters, and I'm especially happy when they are morally ambiguous female characters who are allowed to have weaknesses, who are allowed to do awful things, and they can still be sympathetic, even though I personally could not relate to a person who likes to threaten other people all the time, but still, I really got the characters. I love them. I thought the world building was also pretty solid. Like, there were things that weren't really fully explained. Like, for example, we never really get to hear what the phenomenon is. This book is basically about a boy who is a monster and a girl who is on the opposing side, and they have to be allies together in order to figure out this plot that they get caught up in. And yeah, I really like this. I finished it in 3 days, which is probably a personal record, because I am a really slow reader and it takes a ton of time for me to finish even a short book. This one really swept me off my feet and gave me a twirl around the ballroom, so to speak. Really loved it. And last up, I read the 5th volume of Saga. I have read the first 4 volumes in English, and I accidentally picked up the Finnish volume in the library and noticed it only when I started reading this, even though it said 5th book in Finnish on the cover. But anyway, I thought that, okay, it's in Finnish, so what, I'll give it a go. How bad can it be? The translation is so bad. So bad, guys. It's like someone thought that, okay, I will make an effort to make the most literal word-to-word translation I can possibly get out of this book. And they succeeded. This translation completely misses the tone. Saga has always been a kind of tongue-in-cheek in some ways. Oh man, this like made it seem like this was written like a kindergartner. It kind of like, it didn't enthuse me to read it, but I'll probably read it again in English just to see if it's just a translation. I thought that the whole story in this particular volume was kind of like a filler episode, to be completely honest. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I think I'll have to read the English version too, because this translation just sucked all the joy out of me. And that was my Borrow-A-Thon Wrap Up. If you were a part of Borrow-A-Thon, leave a comment and tell me what kind of books you read, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!